Today on the show, I have the pleasure of speaking with Umair Kabani. Umair, from his college room dorm, was able to create a six-figure business. And since then, he has gone on to have a direct influence in the success of Uber's launch here in Los Angeles and Peerspace's success across the nation here in the United States. Now, Umair has turned his real estate side hustle into his full-time mission, helping others learn about the success of real estate. He is backed with 10 years of experience in brokerage, financing, apartment syndication, and property management. And he wants people to understand that real estate is the vehicle to long-term wealth. His mission now is to connect learners with the right influencers and authorities to help them succeed, and helping others have an abundant mindset, creating more wealth and empowering them to do more in the world. I'm really pumped and excited to have him on the show today to share his incredible story and his background. But enough out of me. Let's get out here. G'day, Umair. Welcome to the show. How you doing today, mate?
Hey, Reed. Thanks for having me on, man.
Mate, my pleasure. Now, before we dive into it, let's give the context of how you and I first met, because I was just on your online real estate summit, which was incredible. So you want to give a little bit of a background on that and how the success has that been going?
Yeah. So I had an idea to launch a real estate summit about a year ago. I wanted to connect the top influencers in real estate with real estate professionals, realtors, and people looking, to get into real estate. Because back when I was 23, I actually got my broker's license, got into the industry, and, became a statistic. I flamed out, as 87% of all realtors do, right? Because I didn't have the right tools, systems, or mentors. So essentially, I created this for my 23-year-old self and wanted to add massive value to the industry. So that was kind of the impetus for me to launch it. And I wanted to reach out to other influencers such as yourself to talk a little bit about investment property. And that's kind of how, we touch base.
Awesome, man. Well, I know we've been in touch for a couple of years now here in the Los Angeles space. You reached out to me a little while ago saying, hey, do you want me to be on that incredible online forum, which was awesome. I had a bunch of fun, and I'm sure you can plug it at the end of the show. But for all those listeners out there who have no idea who you are, do you want to rewind the clock and tell me how you made your first ever dollar as a kid?
Yeah, man. So the way I made my first dollar as a kid was selling candy bars door to door, right?
Like most kids, right?
Yeah, exactly. And that's where you learn patience, you learn persistence, right? You knock door after door, and you know what? Somebody's gonna actually buy your candy. And that's how I made my first dollar. I didn't make my first dollar doing that, but getting the reward as one of the top kids in the school to sell as much candy, I got a chance to stand in this money machine and be able to catch all these dollars everywhere. And so that's exactly how I got my first dollar. It wasn't selling it, but it was the reward for placing one at the top. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, tell me about your background and how you got into, where you are today, because in the introduction, I spoke about Uber. I spoke about Peerspace. Like, that's got nothing to do with real estate, but what's your background and how'd you get into those jobs?
Yeah. So after college, I got my broker's license in real estate. My parents were local developers in the area, so I've always had an affinity for it. Then I got into the financing part, and like I said, I kind of flamed out. Luckily, I was building a software in-house with a friend of mine. It was a social recruiting software that would allow you to plug into your LinkedIn account and see where your friends work, and then send job referrals back and forth. We eventually sold that company back to the investor, but at the time, a buddy of mine was just launching Uber, one of the first employees in LA. And said, hey, looks like you have a recruiting product here. We're having a hard time recruiting black car drivers, to join Uber. Do you want to help out somehow? So I was like, sure. So that's kind of like how I got introduced to Uber. Then, since at Uber, I helped, or I was part of the team that helped them automate and scale their supply side onboardings and acquisitions. And that's where I learned a lot about processes and systems at scale, because a lot of the things we were doing in the LA office there were applicable to every office worldwide. So that's kind of where I learned how to scale a business, scale a tech startup. And since then, I've been helping launch marketplace startups in technology such as Peerspace, Second Address, advising other startups on how to scale their supply side acquisition efforts.
Talk to me about that, because it's scale your supply side for a tech startup is not the average sentence that comes out of someone's mouth. Maybe break it down. What are some of the I don't know, the roadblocks that people face when they're trying to scale a software or tech startup?
Yeah. So the roadblocks around scaling, a supply side of the business is, how do you do this automatically? How do you do this in every city? There's only one of me. How do you replicate, what I am doing? So what we did at Uber and at Peerspace is we would create these playbooks. Essentially, what do they call it? SOP, statement of processes, or standard operating procedures, right? Of each acquisition effort that we would have. So the way we would recruit black car drivers is we went to, the black car companies first, right? Reached out to them, had a value add, then we would bring them in, we would interview them, we would do background checks. I would personally inspect their vehicles and then give them interviews, then say, okay, you're good to go. Then administer, the offboarding, administer them the phones, if they have any, questions, and then handle the customer support. And I was doing this all by myself, right? So this is not scalable, right? This process. So then how do we consolidate this, or how do we use technology to scale it? So what we did was we created wireframes. We talked to the product team at Uber and built this, acquisition process into the app, where now Uber, anybody who wants to join Uber can do a background test, can do an inspection, and we partnered up with Jiffy Lube. So this goes back to, automating, delegating, eliminating, and outsourcing, right? From the 4-hour work week. So we implemented these, this methodology into, this process, and we automated the onboarding process. That way, the team in Boston, the team in Miami, the team in New York can, use the same process. They don't need to interview black car drivers in person. They can just have the app do that.
And what's the difference between a black car driver and just a regular Uber? Why was there a higher touch point, or are they part of the same acquisition process that Uber went through?
So back then in 2012, it was just Uber Black, right? There was no such thing as Uber X. Lyft was barely starting off, and this was like, your private black car driver, right? So we had higher standards for that level of service, right? We wanted to give customers a black car experience. So we wanted to interview them. We wanted to make sure that they would treat the customer right, But then during that time, we launched Uber X, is where we introduced this automated onboarding process. It didn't need to be, as high touch, because then we would let the system filter out the bad drivers. With the ratings, if you get a 4 rating or whatever, we would send each of the drivers a text message saying, hey, you've been getting, low reviews. It looks like you're taking the wrong GPS route. How about, downloading Waze to help you out at that time?
Got it. Like talk to me about the brand recognition, because part of any onboarding process or attracting a service-based business that you're trying to outsource this to people who are driving the black cars, they'd have to have some familiarity with Uber. Was it still an education process going through like, hey, Mr. Black Car Driver or Black Car Driver operators, we are Uber. This is what we do, back in 2012?
Yeah, we had to give them a presentation pitching them like, hey, this is Uber. It's all done from your smartphone. People request a car. You get dispersed a phone. A ring will go off when a driver wants to be picked up. You will just follow the GPS, pick them up. It's cashless. Yes, you did have to introduce them to this new concept. And once, drivers started to hear about it and how much money was actually being made from it, it spread like wildfire, right? So then referrals became a huge thing. Back then.
And now shifting that, because that's all well and good, because I think that's important to not just skip over that. Brand recognition and the pitch and the education to onboard new people is so important. So take Uber, which is now a Google word, probably Googleable word. You now applying it to Peerspace. And for those people who don't know what Peerspace is, it's the Airbnb for what do you want to say? Commercial boardrooms, meeting rooms, and stuff like that. Is that a good summary?
Yeah, we say it's the Airbnb for creative space.
Creative space. Yep.
And that includes office space, production space, entertainment venues. It could be anything that you want. So we have residences on there. People do music videos. I actually had a a French Montana music video done at my parents' house. So super interesting platform. Yeah.
But then for that one, it's a little bit different, right? Because you're trying to find the spaces. And, okay, black car driver. Got it. There's black car services out there. It's pretty easy to go from point, like who you need to go to get, at least to get the conversation going. Owners of buildings, on the other hand, you may never know that they actually have a cool space on the inside that they want to rent out. How did you go about finding those clientele in order to put it on the platform?
Yeah. So my job is all about acquisitions, finding the supply, right? So find the supply that already exists, right? Like why go out, try to educate people when there might be other platforms? Like you can go on Craigslist with people who have like advertising their production studios. We would look on Yelp if there's production studios, event venues, and then we would target these guys first.
Got it.
And of course I created a process to then, get all of these leads, figure out the sales process to then scale it nationwide.
Interesting. No, it's very smart to use existing. I think that's probably going to be the soundbite for today. Find the supply that already exists, and using other platforms like Craigslist or other mediums where people are already advertising to say, hey, have you heard about this thing over here called XYZ? You can use it to make more money, and we've got a wider audience and all that sort of stuff. So you were just on the acquisition of the space. Was there any difference of then trying to market it to people who want to use that space in terms of being a market share or people, enough butts in seats to look at and want to actually, hire spaces to shoot videos and have these cool meetings and host conferences and stuff like that?
Yeah. So the first thing about any marketplace startup is, right, like you need to get the supply first. Just like with Uber, you get the black car drivers. With Peerspace, we would get this production space or event space. Once you have the supply, then you can actually put it online where it's easily identifiable. It's very transparent in terms of like what you're getting, how you're getting it, and you put it on the website. And then obviously you raise a ton of money to go ahead and pump into Google ads, Facebook ads, content marketing, whatever it is, to then attract those eyeballs to your website to see the supply.
Right. And then to get word of mouth to become a household name, which is a whole topic in itself. And we're going to go very 30,000 level right now. But that's such an interesting, experience and background. Because I know when we first met, I think you were still doing that, or you were in the process of doing that, and you became very good at that system orientated processes, the standard operating procedures. So how have you taken those skill sets into now the real estate world to educate the masses about what you're trying to do now, and maybe give a bit of background on what you're trying to do now?
Yeah. So, I'm all about, thinking in systems, thinking in processes that can scale now. Right. And when I was younger, I didn't think like this. And, I feel like a lot of realtors, a lot of young entrepreneurs who haven't worked in a high growth startup or a super corporate environment really don't learn this. And I think it's what hinders them from their success, because they could be chasing all sorts of ways and systems, and like they might not know a certain way of doing it. Like, why reinvent the wheel is what new entrepreneurs are doing. So like I said, that was my impetus for creating such, a summit, a marketplace, a community for young realtors, real estate professionals to really understand the best systems tools out there. That's why I brought you on. I wanted you to explain to people like what is a cap rate, how to invest, like what to look for when you invest into a 4-unit deal or a 5-unit deal. Like, what is your system for doing that? Mm-hmm. And then just do that, right? Like, no need to create your own, no need to look anywhere else. This is it, right? So I wanted to consolidate this information that it took you years to learn and put it all in one central place for people to go ahead and learn.
Got it. And that is what you're trying to create right now. So what is are you just creating education platforms now? Are you trying to, I know on the summit itself was more geared toward realtors rather than real estate investors. So maybe talk to me a little bit about why it was that rather than the masses of the average Joe and Blow who might have a W-2 job who want to invest in real estate and get started.
Yeah, I really wanted to focus on a niche, right? And if I'm like, hey, if I want to service everybody, then I wouldn't know where to begin. So this first one, I'm like, hey, let me really service the realtor industry, or for people looking to learn about real estate, right? Like later, I might do something around real estate investment, right? Because a lot of brokers want to understand how to get into the investment side, whether it's for their clients or just even for themselves, or find a group like my group or your group to like invest with, right? Like how do they learn how to do this? What to look for? What are the pitfalls? Who are these people exactly? So that was my first foray into it, to service realtors. And I'm going to continue to do that. But then that's the niche, and I'm going to then expand from there to get into then investment. And that's my next, path.
So you're sort of laying the foundations in order to build those blocks on top of that to get people to, to become investors or to become, essentially become investors, right? To fund more acquisitions of potential future deals, right?
Exactly.
Right. And so how does that then, what is the importance of creating your wireframes? You may use the word before, wireframes, or this platform or this foundation in order to have a future-proof business? Because if you're leading with the education piece, you're building those systems and standard operating procedures, how important is that to any business to be recession-proof or future-proof, and that you can then step away and let the beast run by itself?
Yeah. So I don't know if you're familiar with Gary Vee, but he's just all about adding value. Same with Tony Robbins. It's like, add more value to the marketplace than anyone can, and you win, right? So now I'm in the sense of like, hey, let me just add as much value to this industry as I can from the knowledge that I have. Let the community build. Let me just provide value, and then things will just magically happen such.
Awesome. And so do you think that is super important for any business startup to have that and have that element of the business in order to educate about what the business does? Because that will then break down questions. People can understand what you are. Like you think about Uber back in the day, this revolutionized the way in which we use transportation. Imagine pitching that beginning. Everyone's like, what the hell are you talking about? Wireless cash on a phone. It's that education piece, and the same thing that you're doing right now with your realtors. It's creating a space that people are already in the space of real estate. And this might not necessarily be investors, but you're using creating a platform of knowledge for them to go out and then maybe talk to other people and spread the word of what Umair is doing. It's so important, right? I don't know if people can understand how important it is to create those platforms in order to have a successful long-term business, right?
Yeah, it's immense, right? Because you're essentially, when you create a platform, you create a community. Mm-hmm. And a lot of the realtors that had signed up are pretty new, or they were stuck somewhere, right? So from the knowledge, and I've gotten a lot of feedback from it already, like people are already starting to implement some of the tactics and systems that have been introduced. And these things don't happen overnight, right? So I want to stay with them through this journey of them being successful. They get like, oh, wow, like I'm making a lot of money. And then eventually, all right, now what do I do with this money? What vehicle and investment should I put into? I should put into stocks, sure. But I should also put into real estate. How should I invest into real estate? And so that's where like conversations with me and yourself and other experts, within this platform will then help them make the right decisions, whether it's to fix and flip, get into apartment buildings, syndicate, broker, whatever it is, right?
You strike me as a guy that has a really awesome mindset. How's that developed over time? Because you've got these system backgrounds clearly in the weeds, right? Anything to do with systems, you have to understand the business inside and out in order to go away and problem solve and say, boom, there's the system and that's what we're going to go create. So how do you combine the two, being this sort of thought leader and an entrepreneurial, groundbreaking guy with an awesome mindset, and also the other side of your brain that's probably, really into the weeds and getting bogged down, because not having that combination can be kind of difficult, right?
Yeah. And that didn't happen overnight, right? Like I had to fail a lot, right? And I say fail as in quotes, because each failure is actually a lesson, mm-hmm. right? You can't look at it as, oh, it's a failure, I don't ever want to look at it again. No, what did it teach you, right? And each failure that I would have would teach me a lesson. I'm like, wow. So instead of saying like, why did that failure happen to me? I say, what did that failure teach me? So I don't make the same mistake again. Like, I'm totally cool with making new mistakes, but as long as I'm not making the same mistake, I have progress. And that progress is happiness, right? Whatever it may be in your business, in your life, in your relationships, you just want progress. You don't want to stay stagnant, right? Because if you're not growing, you're dying, mm-hmm. right? There's no in between. Like you don't just stay the same age at the same second. Like you are growing, you are aging, or you are dying, right? So I have this mentality around the world where I am constantly growing. I'm constantly learning. Life is happening for me, and I take everything in stride.
Awesome. I think that's so important, because in today's world where we do have a lot of people, and Gary Vee I'm a follower of, there's a lot of people out online making a ton of noise. And with all the noise, how do you not get caught up in it and get caught up in the idea of being successful, in the idea of being a hustler, in the idea of creating a business? There comes a point where you got to sort of shut all that out and just say, hey, I'm going to go create it. I know how to create it, and I don't need anything special, or I don't need to create these widgets, or I don't need things to support me, all this stuff. I just need to go out and sometimes do, because that's what we can sometimes all get caught up in is the, oh, someone else is doing this over there and I'm going to have to go over there and I've got to try and be like them. Like, no, stick to your lane, understand what you're good at, back yourself, and then just go off and execute. And to your point, you're going to fail at some point along the way. There are going to be lessons. You're going to learn from that, and you're going to continue to grow. So I think there's a little bit of this dichotomy that people get stuck not actually doing anything, rather than tweeting and freaking hashtagging and not actually going out and executing and producing awesome content like yourself.
Yeah, just consistent, persistent action. Consistent, persistent, massive action. Right. Just as simple as that. Every day, every day, every day.
You talk about the learned skill of what I was saying before about the two sides of the brain. One being a very mindset, forward thinking, go out there, take action, very empowering. You have a lot of great energy. I can feel it right now through just the virtualness of Zoom. But to someone who's sitting and listening to this who doesn't have that, what advice do you have for them?
Well, read books.
You said it was learned, right? You said it was learned. It didn't just happen overnight. You didn't just wake up one day and be like, I'm going to go crush this world.
Yep. It would be find a mentor and learn, right? Like, and if you don't have mentors around you, the greatest mentors are books, right? Like I have the book right here, like Think and Grow Rich with me right now. I have the book Power of Now, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Learn from these mentors. If you don't have a specific mentor that's around you, like that's why you're listening to the show. You're also listening to myself, read what are potential mentors for you for free, right? Seek out the people who have already done what you have done, and you will succeed with continuous, persistent action.
Right. No, I love that. I think it's super important that people keep back to that. You stop growing, you're dying. I have one that if you stop learning, you're also dying. You're not growing, right? You got to continue to learn, and ego, and we're getting to some really deep things of it, but ego can sometimes stop us from doing that, thinking we know it all, and I don't need to learn that, or I don't need to read that book because I know it all. And that's when ego gets in the way, and you can't get out of your own way in order to grow as a person, as a business. And I think that's super important. What mentors have you had in your life that has helped you got to where you are today?
Yeah. So Tony Robbins has actually been a huge mentor. I've gone to countless seminars of his, and he brings in amazing guests as well from all walks of life. So if anybody that hasn't ever gone to, a UPW or a Date with Destiny, go. You will meet amazing people from technology to real estate to e-commerce to doctors, lawyers, all looking to improve. That's been a huge shift in my life, like going to those conferences and actually meeting the people that are reading the same books as I am, right? And then from there, realizing the power of a conference, gave me the idea, hey, what if I can bring this to, somebody in Africa, somebody in Australia, like with my conference that I held, I think I had maybe 20 countries, people from 20 countries, almost every state in the United States attend, right? I would not be able to do this if I had a conference, in Los Angeles where we live, right? I wouldn't be able to get, thousands of people to attend. So it was really opening up, access to information and mentors that I was, blessed enough to go to, during this conference. And I'm like, hey, let's do an online version of this. And now I'm helping other people and companies, doing something similar.
That's awesome. And in the same sense, you've also created credibility for yourself, right? You're the creator behind all of this. You might not necessarily have 50 years or 30 years worth of experience, but by bringing all these masters together and providing a platform of learning, you as an individual, as your business, as a thought leader will ultimately grow, right? Because you are rubbing shoulders with the best in the biz. So awesome stuff. Mate, what advice can you give to people who are listening to this show, who want to get started, get out of their own way, mindset, anything? What are sort of the top 2 or 3 pieces of advice besides the mentorship that they need to do on a daily habit or daily practice to to keep track on towards their
Yeah.
goals?
Well, it's super simple. It's like define your goal. What is your goal? And then believe you can go ahead and achieve it, right? And then feel it, like repeat it to yourself. Like, hey, like, let's say next year you want to, earn $1 million by acquiring, multifamily asset. Well, believe that you can do it first, right? So like I am able to, acquire, $1 million worth, multifamily assets by 2020, like December 2020, and then feel it in your bones and keep saying it to yourself. Because trust me, if you say something like 100 times or 1,000 times, guess what? You're going to believe that shit, right? And so it's rewiring the neural pathways in your brain to help you actually see it and feel it and come into reality around it, right? That's from Think and Grow Rich, Napoleon Hill. If anybody's not read that book, read it, you learn it. And then almost every conference, guru, trainer will, bring things or take things from that book where then you can apply and use into your life.
That's awesome. I think it's really, really important that setting the right goal and doing consistent action every single day. And it might only be small steps. And that's what people struggle with, right? Is those small steps that they don't think they're tracking forward, but you are tracking forward. You just know that those small actionable steps each and every day consistently done over time will get you to your goal, whatever that might be. And then also believing that you can do that. And there's going to be tough times and, you're going to doubt yourself and all that sort of stuff, but keep going. Don't give up. Mate, what does the future hold for you now with what you're creating, and where's this conference and platform going in the next 5 to 10 years?
Yeah, so the conference is called Realtors Mastery Summit, but I got in trouble with the Realtors Association, so I can't call it Realtors Mastery Summit anymore. So it's called the Real Estate Agent Mastery Summit. It's a long name, but we have this summit. We'll be launching more micro niche summits around maybe possibly investing, branding, fix and flipping, whatever it may be. Like I'm still getting feedback from my audience in terms of like what do they want to learn about. And, bring these experts, together, share, have them share their best knowledge, their information with their community. And then continue to kind of just build from there and just try to add massive value.
Awesome stuff. I think I'm excited to see what it grows into, and hopefully can help you in any way you want in terms of the investing space. But tell me one other thing on the personal side. I remember we spoke a couple of weeks ago, you were using co-living space to travel around the world. Are you still doing that?
Yes, I am. Yeah, I live 100% exclusively in co-living. There's many companies like Outside or Common that are around the world where I'm currently bi-coastal right now. I travel between LA and New York, but I'll be in Bali for a month. I might be in South Africa. So with this life, it allows me to kind of live as if I was like retired, right? Like people think that they can travel to islands and do this once they're retired. Like, guess what? You can do this now with co-living. It's going to be the way people live in the future.
Just to give it's a whole episode that we can do on itself, but just give a quick snapshot into what it is. Quickly explain to the people what co-living is and how it works.
Yeah. So if people heard of co-working, right? Like WeWork or Industrious or Regus. Co-living is a co-working environment where there's also living space. Right? So you can live and work out of this place with other entrepreneurs in real estate and tech, e-commerce, whatever it is. You can brainstorm, you can share ideas. People are living this digital nomad life with you. You can share, best, your top restaurants from Bali to LA to New York, whatever it is, right? You're building this community of other fellow entrepreneurs. And if anybody hasn't stayed in one, if they're traveling to any city, highly look into it. Because once again, you'll meet this cool like community of people that think differently.
Is it like a glorified hostel?
I would call it more like a grown-ups version or like an entrepreneur's version of a hostel.
Right.
Where you get your own room and everything is like nice and clean. The cleaners come quite often, and it's in like really nice parts of the city. And it's not the cheapest option. It's kind of like furnished housing. But the community you have, the workspace, it's fantastic. So definitely look into it.
You buy into a membership, right? And that you can then, hey, I'm in LA for a month, and the next month I'm off to New York, and someone else will take that spot in LA. Correct?
Exactly. You pay for a yearly membership fee where you get discounted rates. You have, flexible cancellation. So if you want to stay in a city longer, you can. So it's
It's pretty
definitely
awesome.
interesting. Yeah.
Pretty awesome. I'm gonna have to do an episode on that space because
Yeah.
it is a very cool space to be getting into, and particularly as people like yourself don't want to be tied down or don't want to have to, the cost of living is getting too much,
Mhm.
but they still want the freedom. It's a great way of like, well, I've got a lease, a 12-month lease. I can't
Yeah.
get out of it. I want to go, over here for a month. I want to go to Bali for a month. I want to go to South Africa for a month. How do they keep traveling around the world with not having that noose around their neck, like a lease or renting out their house that they own or their apartment that they own? But very, very cool stuff. Hey, mate, we're coming to the end of the show. You ready to get into the top 5 investing tips?
Let's do it.
Mate, what is the daily habit you practice to keep on track towards your goals?
Meditation, then writing after that. Writing my goals.
Writing your goals. No, love it.
Yep.
Are you a big meditator? Like, how long do you meditate for? 5, 10 minutes?
20 minutes every day for the past 3 or 4 years. After that, I write my top 3 tasks, top 3 things that I'm grateful for.
Right.
That's it.
For those people who are listening and who are avid listeners of this show, I think meditation is the number one thing that people do. So hint, hint, nudge, nudge. Get into it.
Yep.
Who is the most influential person in your career to date?
The most influential person in my career is probably my brother. Mm-hmm. He works for one of the top hedge funds in the world, Tiger Global Capital. He's one of the smartest people that I know. Gives me the right advice almost 99% of the time.
Is that Tiger 21?
Is it Tiger 21? No, I believe it's called Tiger Global. Like there's a lot of Tiger funds out there, right? So he's part of one of the funds.
Got it. Awesome stuff. In one sentence, also I should say, what is the most influential tool in your business? Now, when I say tool, it could be a software or it could be a hardware related tool that you use day in, day out to help you be successful.
It is probably... It's probably like it's an easy copy. Notion.
What's Notion? I don't know.
Yeah, Notion is it's kind of like a task management tool mixed with like Evernote.
Got it.
You can manage your entire business, your company, your upcoming projects, your calendars. You can tag people in it. You can do everything from Notion.
Awesome. I'll have to check it out. I don't use Notion. I use Slack. But yeah, whatever floats your boat. In one sentence, what is the biggest failure you've had in your career, and what did you learn from that failure?
Biggest failure was when I launched a startup called Bounty Me that eventually I sold to an investor, but we sold it at a huge discount, right? We had Uber as a client. We had Cisco as a client. And what we did was we just started building out too much of the product versus focusing on what the customer wanted, right? So that taught me to focus on who my ideal customer is and then give them an offer they can't refuse, right? I don't know if you've heard of the Zappos story with Tony Hsieh.
Yep.
Where, he wasn't the CEO of Zappos, found that they were struggling, came in, found out that the ideal customer for Zappos was, a 40-year-old woman. Right. And that's when he introduced like, hey, like you can return this at no cost. And that completely changed the game for him. And he eventually sold to Amazon for $1 billion.
Wow. So you're saying your biggest failure was not understanding how much you're worth or how much the company's worth. Was that right?
It's by not focusing on the customer and getting sales from the customer versus focusing too much on loving your own product.
Got it. So customer first and what their wants and needs are rather than what your perception of what they think they need, right?
Exactly.
Awesome. Well, mate, I want to thank you for coming on the show. One final question is, where can people reach you to continue the conversation? They want to be in your sphere. They want to understand a little bit more about anything from co-living to your real estate investing mastery summit and what you're trying to build in the next 5 to 10 years.
Yeah, so the easiest way is just Google me, Umair Kabani. You can reach me on LinkedIn. You can also find me on realestateagentmasterysummit.com. I know that is a handful. There's also ukabani@gmail.com. That's my personal email. I look at every single email that is sent to me.
Awesome. Awesome. And we'll have all those links up on the show notes. Well, Umar, I want to thank you so much for taking some time out of your day. Some of the things that I took away from today's show was, I think the first one is finding the supply that already exists in order to build your business in terms of income, whether it be from outward facing product, from client acquisition point of view, or from a supply point of view to help you get the business up and running. I think it's really, really important on those lessons early on in Uber and Peerspace, using basic stuff like, black car services and Craigslist.com, where people are already active on platforms, and then dragging them to a new platform is really, really important. The second thing is understanding your standard operating procedures and trying to identify what they are early on, and then trying to carve out the time to sit down and think about them, right? Because not a lot of entrepreneurs are out there hustle, blah, 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 like a million miles an hour, and they don't take the time to stop, set up the systems in order to create an asset for the business to then go on and keep growing, because you're just too busy in the day-to-day putting out fires. So I think those two are the biggest things that would take away from this conversation. Did I leave anything out?
No, I think you covered it, man.
Awesome, man. Well, thank you so much again. Enjoy the rest of your week, and we'll catch up soon.
Awesome, Reed. Take care.
Well, there you have another cracking episode jam-packed with some incredible advice from Umar. If you do want to check out anything that he is up to, please head over to his website. And remember, all the links from today's show will be up on my website at reedgoossens.com. I want to thank you all again for taking some time out of your day to tune in to continue to grow your real estate IQ, because that is what we're all about here on this show. And we're going to do it all again next week. So be bold, be brave, and remember, go give life a crack.